early last year, I was listening to a like interview with someone, like someone like a call in on like LBC or Radio 4 or something like that. And someone literally just said, like, well, they're gonna have to learn, and that might mean people die. And I was like, that's where we're at. We're at the
Mm.
point now where it's like, well, people should, I guess. Like, and especially I think what I find really insidious about what Keir Starmer is doing now is this focus on this concern about
Mm.
these smuggling gangs. Like these smugglers are the people that we're trying to, because it's so sad that these people are dying, and that's why it's like, but it's the human traffickers and the smugglers that we're trying to get at, and that's why we have to increase policing, and that's why we're going to arrest people and have harsher sentences. And if you actually look at what that term smuggling now means in the UK justice system and in Europe, there was the Open Democracy coverage of this. They were saying that in 2023, 244 people were charged for illegal arrival in the UK, and out of that, 86 of them were alleged to have steered the boat.
Yeah.
Like steering a boat
There is no
counts as
smuggler who
cheating.
ever gets on one of those boats. There is
Why
nobody.
would they?
Of
Like
course
it's
they wouldn't. Why on earth would they? The person with their hand on the tiller who has been caught by a drone on, with drone footage of their hand on the tiller. So this is where this story starts today. It's like we're spending more money on these technologies to further patrol the border. That person is very often the most vulnerable person on the boat. In all cases, they're just asylum seekers, all of them, just like people who are seeking protection. But what happens is, in order to make that crossing, you have to pay the smuggler. And if you have run out at that stage of any family member or any friend who you can ask to borrow that last bit of money to make that crossing, then the smuggler can force you to put your hand on the tiller and be the one to steer the boat in order to get that crossing for free or at a discounted rate. So these are actually the people in the worst situations of all. And then we say, oh, look, hand on the tiller, facilitating illegal entry. And they throw these people in jail.
and
I mean, it's just horrendous.
I think it was something like 22 of them were people who have disputed age as well. So like they
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have like their documents with them, but they've been ascribed as adults by the UK, but you don't actually know. There's also like this whole condemnation of these people as being these smugglers. Well, it's the smugglers that we're going after. Like you said, like it wouldn't make any sense at all for these trafficking gangs and these smugglers to ever get on one of these boats, but people are getting arrested for it. I think also again it ties into this whole thing of where the money is, like you were saying. Even when people complain about like the asylum system, oh, it costs so much. The UK spends 30% more per asylum seeker in terms of housing and everything because our processes are so encumbered, and we let private companies make huge amounts of money off it. Something like 63 million that like Clearspring made last
Yeah.
year in providing asylum housing for disabled asylum seekers that had rats in it, where people had to like beg for toilet roll from the staff. Like, and it's like, oh, but they're costing too much. And it's like, let's
Yeah.
what's made like why would I almost feel like people are they're so close to having the point when they say things like, oh, well, the government says that they don't want asylum seekers, but then they allow them. But it's not because the government secretly loves asylum seekers and wants to help them. It's
Mm,
because they're a source of profit. They're a source of private contracts and they can funnel more money away to them. And then they're
absolutely.
also an easy scapegoat to blame. Like,
Of course. Why don't we have housing? Those asylum seekers that we put up in squalid shared accommodation and pay somebody so much for that they have become a billionaire and entered the Sunday Time rich list. This is Graham King, who is the head of Clear Springs, which is, yeah, that company that you mentioned, has a private contract with the Home Office to run asylum accommodation. And he has been, I mean, the dystopia of that to become a billionaire from the despicable housing that you provide for asylum seekers who are trapped in a system where they're not entitled to work, and who are used as the scapegoat for the fact that we don't have housing in this country. I mean, like the layers of disgust that I feel at this system, and it's not just house accommodation providers. It's, as I say, it's the drone companies, it's the surveillance companies, it's the arms companies, it is the French government, which we pay hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds to per year to fund their border industry. It's also the government in places like Turkey and Libya, even though they don't really have a government, we've just picked one of the warring factions and decided that we're going to pay them money in order to contain migrants. Like there is a network of actors who benefit from this all around the world. And of course, our politicians benefit from it too, because it is much, much, much easier to say that the reason why you can't get a GP appointment is because of them refugees than to really invest in the health service that we all need and deserve.
Mhm. Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. It is,
It's also incredibly transparent though, and that's the bit I don't get. The bit I don't get is like,
why don't you see it? Why don't you
yeah,
get it, guys?
I mean, there's obviously bad actors, you know, there's people who are
There's
using this.
misinformation, yeah.
Yeah, they're spreading lies. You know, a lot of the people that I debate with, you know, like they're MPs or they're like commentators, and they're people who know the truth, and they are deliberately building their careers and benefiting in their own ways by spreading these lies. But I also spend a lot of my time talking to so-called ordinary people with genuine concerns, you know, that lovely phrase. Um, and I think there has been a really serious increase in the misinformation that's going around because people's level of like the basics being completely wrong is much, much higher now than it was, say, 5 years ago when I was doing this work. It's really noticeable. And I think that, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for what you guys do here and why I'm so, so happy to be on here because, like, there really is. And I don't know if you saw the Hope Not Hate investigation that, like, exposed loads of far right, activities over the last couple of weeks. Well, they showed one of the things they showed that was just, like, a minor part of their investigation, but it really, like, resonated with me was, like, you have, like, tech billionaires who have interests, obviously, in maintaining, like, this scapegoat or whatever, or maybe they're just horrible racists, God knows why, but anyway, they directly fund, individuals to become influencers and content creators on the far right, producing dishonest, racist, and scaremongering content that is anti-migrant, and so it just made me think because I was like, there is such a huge amount of content that spreads these lies. And your average person's understanding is so warped now. Even when, like, I was in the hairdresser the other day and they were like, you know, I said like, "Oh, I've got this big debate this evening." It was, yeah, before I went on the Al Jazeera one, and then, and so they were asking, and I was like, "Oh, it's my great." I was in central London. I was like, "It's probably safe to say that I'm like advocating for the
Think
rights."
again.
Yeah, you'd hope, but who knows? And they were like totally on side, and they were like, "Oh yes, these poor people, it's so awful." And then they just went straight into, and yeah, and it's really difficult because they throw away their documents, and you know, and it's just like,
And
but
they want the
you're on the
benefits. They
wrong
want the
side of it.
benefits. Who wouldn't want those
Yeah,
fantastic
yeah, and it's
benefits?
like, you are a very humane and compassionate person who cares so much that even though you've bought the lies, you still think we should be treating these people fairly and introducing safe routes, and you know, and it was quite impressive, but it was also very, very disheartening because it was like, even you who clearly are not like, you know, susceptible to like supporting the far right and seeking out that kind of content,
It's the
you have just,
respectable side. Like,
everybody has heard these lies. Everybody thinks for some reason that people make the choice to get into a small boat when they could take a cheap flight with Ryanair, but they don't because they're sneaky that way. I mean,
well, this is
why would anyone do that?
but this is where it comes to me as well. I do think in terms of this wider dehumanization piece and the wider sort of, to be honest, like the white supremacy investment in English culture being this superior thing is like when I think it was on one of your videos actually that I was on a tear arguing with some people. Probably not even real people. I'm probably wasting my time. But
I
the
really love when I see you're going into
Thank
battle for me
you.
in my comments.
I'm always coming in. But it was someone saying like, well, if like it was about the child who died in the channel, and they were like, well, what parent would take their child on a boat? And it was like the fact that you can't even give someone the benefit of the doubt of like, what would you have to be facing in order for that to happen? The assumption is just, well, you're probably a bad parent. That in itself is a display that you can't give people who don't look like you the same level of grace that
Mm.
you would give
Mhm,
yourself. Like
mhm.
it's been so widely dehumanized now. I think when we look at those headlines earlier about Keir's announcement, it didn't say anything about the smuggling gangs in the headlines. The headlines just say, "Keir Starmer declares borders a national security issue. Small boats crossings a national security issue." 6 in 10 people don't read past that headline. They just
No.
think, "Yes, it's a security issue." Even if you did read it, you then hear him sharing misinformation about smuggling gangs. But
Yeah.
you're getting a little bit closer to the truth, but it's like levels on levels of this paternalism, respectability politics, like same as when we talk about trans people is like, well, we really care about trans people and we're very
Yeah.
respectful, but we also don't think that you should be allowed to really ever go to the toilet.
And
Um,
similarly, like, weaponizing, like, a faux feminism, right? Like, and I'm just so concerned about the women.
yeah, we're concerned about
Um,
everything but the people that we're talking about this time.
yeah. And, like, similarly, just as those people are very, very unconcerned about trans women, um, they are very, very unconcerned about the refugee women who are
Mhm.
impacted by the lack of safe routes to be able to find, to rebuild their lives. So, I get it all the time. Oh, yeah, but it was different with Ukraine because they were all women. Why were they all women? Because they had a safe route.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
And then, like,
it makes me wanna scream. It just makes me wanna scream, and sometimes I do scream.
no, yeah, I know sometimes you gotta scream, sometimes you do. And then but, like, then this, like, when I was on Reddit, I mean, it was really bad when I was on Five Live this morning, there was a caller, a woman who was like, "I just wanna speak up for the women." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe this is gonna be good." No, no, no.
Nope.
Um,
Just the very
because
specific
she
group
was
of women.
concerned about the racist perceived threat of sexual violence from men. And, like, what and she put it in cruder terms than that on the radio. And then it was like, Zoe, come back on that." It was like, I feel like dying because, like, not only is this horrendously racist and harmful to, the well-being of, like, people of color throughout our country if that kind of lie is being propagated, but also what damage that does to the actual safety of women and girls from sexual violence, because it deliberately distract, and it is deliberate. It's like we've been saying all night, this is deliberate. Deliberately distracts us from being able to actually address the issues and the policies that would help women be safer and address misogyny in our society that is overwhelmingly perpetrated by the men who know women and who interact with the women in their daily life, right? We are unable to focus on that and to actually get the solutions that women deserve to be freaking safe in this country because of insane, deranged, racist, scaremongering like that.
Yep.
That seeks to push us away to look at, no, 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 look at that brown guy,
Look
look at
at
that brown guy.
everything except the white guy.
Mhm.
Once
Yeah,
again.
look at
Oh, look at
everything
here. Maybe
except
it's the
the
trans women.
actual problem.
It's
And that creates, and she was there being like, "I wanna stick up for the women in this country," and I was like, "As a woman in this country, you are making me less safe."
yeah, yeah.
And you are actually creating circumstances where I am more likely to suffer violence because the policies that should be put in place to protect me are instead focused on some guy on a boat.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.